Welcome everyone to The Rift. I am your co-host, Jeremy Culver, aka Darcy.
And I'm Kyle Calhoun Gloria.
Kyle, it has been a long week in my opinion, heading into the third week of the LCS splits, but it always seems that way when we're on the days of no games. So Kyle, how's things been with you though?
Things have been good, man. Just as you and I are sport fans, overall, I've been really looking forward to the Super Bowl coming up this weekend, and of course, it was another great week in the LCS, and there was a lot of things that happened. Teams winning that you're just like, wait, what? Teams losing that's unexpected. So very interesting weekend overall, and excitement over, of course, as I said, the big game on Sunday.
Yes, yes, and that means that on Sunday there will be a lot of LCS games as well as the big game in the Super Bowl. But let's talk LCS and especially let's talk the last week. So Kyle, let's talk originally starting off with EU Day 1. Kyle, what was the most interesting series in your mind out of that?
I actually went with the Misfits versus Rocat game just for the fact that at the start of our shows again, you were saying that you felt Misfits was, bottom, and I felt
Hmm.
Rocat, or I originally I felt Giants were, and then we kind of talked about Rocat and how Misfits were a little bit better, and Rocat was really looking poorly. So I was curious on how this matchup would have been overall, and how close it was, or how dominant it was, like which one of these two teams are, um, just the better of the two.
Hmm. And well, game one was obviously a dominating fashion when it came to Misfits. So, Kyle, let's talk a little bit first. When you looked at that game, where did you feel Misfits got their advantage? Was it in the pick ban phase, or was it just how they played the map?
Pick band phase seems to be, I mean, overall what it's been for every other matchups we had, but this is just completely outplayed dominance. Like every lane outplayed the other. Hansama got fed and destroyed. Power of Evil did his thing. Ignar, man, that dude. I still love that dude as a sport as much as I
Mhm.
have this whole gripe on Misfits to begin with, but still, there's a lot of players. I love that bot lane still, and they really showed this matchup why I like them.
Yeah, and they did obviously a dominating fashion. Zero deaths in the bot lane. Technically, only one death, and that came from Power of Evil. But that did happen at the late stages of the game, so technically it could have been an easy, clean game.
Hmm.
It's if it wasn't for that. Kyle, let's look at Rocat though in that first game, and obviously they didn't get a bad team comp in my opinion, but they fell behind. It seems really early. Where did you feel their mistake came from, or what started the snowball behind that they just could never stop?
Just output, like maneuver, like there was always just late to situations that just outplayed, got themselves caught out where they shouldn't have been. They overall that Rocket team just looks like a mess. Like, and it's really showing. So
And I will say, at least throughout most of this game, now keep in mind this was a fairly short game at only
hmm
32 minutes. Score wise, stayed roughly the same. I mean, it was a 2-0
hmm
advantage for Misfits all the way until around the 21-minute mark, and then that's when Misfits finally got their third and fourth kill. But it just felt like watching that series once Misfits got those early kills, they just never gave Rocat an advantage to take it back. Now,
nope.
in my let me ask you this: is it because of the fact this Misfits team maybe has had better practices, or do you think it's better players all around, or what do you think? Because technically, on the side of Rocat, I mean, they have some young guys, but Betsy and Yarnin are two people that, at least in previous splits, were always seen as like mid to higher tier players.
Yeah, I've never really been a big Betsy fan to begin with, but Yarnin, we know he showed what he can do, but listen, Yarnin was on an H2K team, or was it H2K he did the dominance with?
That is correct.
Yeah, that was stacked. You're going into a real cat team now that there's a lot of question marks in a lot of different lanes. And Yarden also took off the entire last split. So, right, or was it the entire year? This last split, anyways. I know for sure, but he, taking that time off could have affected him. And you come back on a real cat team that continues to struggle every single split. So, I don't know if it's just like the inside infrastructure of that team that's a mess that they can't figure out what to do to get good practices or whatnot. But that team's always a mess, and it shows every year.
Well, let's head into the game two because obviously this was a 2-0 series win for Misfits, but game two was actually very close
Extremely.
for Rocat. Um, where did you feel the biggest turnaround came for Rocat?
Um, I think just overall they played the map better. They kept up with the team and everything. I mean, the calls they were making finally seemed to be working for them until, of course, the good old we're gonna go Baron call with an completely open Nexus, and of course Misfits took advantage of that. Because overall, I mean, Rocat finished above in kills, but they were still behind at the end 3K gold. So there still is that deficit. But at 50 minutes though, by that mark, that really doesn't matter anymore. The gold lead.
That is that is
So,
very true, and there were times where Rocat did have the gold lead. I mean, they took a
mhm,
1,000 gold lead at the 31-minute mark. Then they gave it away, took it back at 35 minutes, gave it away, took it back at 42 minutes, gave it away. So they at least are a better team than maybe what they showed in game one. But I think it kind of is what you're alluding to in the fact that Misfits, at least as a whole, they can build a gold lead and hold it better than it seems Rocat can at all stages of the game currently.
yep, exactly. And like I said, I mean, Rocat, I mean, depending on when they should have actually made that Baron call, because they probably should have held out. With it being an open inhib already gone and a completely open Nexus without turrets, that's a very daring move to do, especially when you got a Tahm Kench and of course Misfits showed why. Just Tahm Kench ult into your base, Nexus dead while you're getting Baron, which they didn't even get by the way. It was stolen.
Mm-hmm.
So overall though, like I said, a lot better game from Rocat overall, but still that team right now it's messy looking, and I'm interested to see if they can actually get a win this year.
I feel they'll get a win. I don't feel they're that bad of a team, but they are definitely pretty bad. Again, I only had them at 9 in my power rankings, and I
Hmm.
had Misfits at 10, only for the simple fact with the changes that were made in the offseason, I didn't know what kind of Misfits team we'd see translated. As I had alluded to in the power rankings, I thought that they could be at least 6, if not higher, with their
Hmm.
original team that they qualified with. And then the changes just made me bump them down. But I do want to also point out, second EU backdoor with a player. You had Caps with Rise in week one, and you have Ignar
It,
doing it on Tom Catch.
it seems to be a phase up throughout the LCS because I mean, even games later on in NA we've seen a couple, so it's
Yep, this
interesting to see.
is those backdoor base races are always fun to watch.
Hmm.
Kyle, let's get into day one. Now this was a confusing week for EU, and so we'll kind of get to that in a second. But let's go to day one. NA. What's the series you're taking a look at?
I'm gonna go with the TSM dig game because I was really curious on after the week TSM had in the first week on how they would bounce back, and still a lot of questions with dig. Are they a good that top tier team? Where do they fall, and how would they stack up to somebody like TSM? Because overall with Cloud9, they seem to do all right, but they still took that loss. So I was really curious on how they would do against a team that we feel and is in the second in the power rankings for both of us.
Yeah,
So.
And let's talk about I guess the breakdown of that first game, because they, watching that first game, I know the final score ended up going in the favor of Dignitas, but TSM had done quite a good advantage throughout that game until around the 25-minute mark, when Dig finally got the ball rolling basically in their favor. Kyle, what do you think was that kind of, I guess, change in Dignitas taking the advantage and kind of never letting go of it?
Um, I mean, overall, that team's just, when they make plays, they make plays. And they have such fantastic farmers on that team. Because even if, like, in the previous week, even if they go down a kill or a couple kills, they still keep up with farm. That
Hmm.
team with farming is something else. Like Someday and Chaser and even that bot lane, they farm really really well for, even if a mistake happens, a gank top, gank bot, whatever, they don't fall from
Hmm.
behind from it. They can continuously keep up. And because like I said, I mean, even later in that game, I mean, it's only a kill difference, but I'm pretty sure it was like past the 30-minute mark, and TSM still had that kill advantage, but they were down kills. They were down gold still, like by
Hmm.
quite a bit. So that tells you on farm wise on how much more of an advantage they had going for them.
And when you look at the way things turned around um, at the end of that match, um, how were you feeling heading into the second game? Did you feel like Dig could carry the momentum, or how were you feeling?
Um, I thought they could, but you can never count out you know, either you can never count out TSM for being TSM. I thought they could carry somewhat momentum, but it's just one of those things when it's TSM, you can guarantee they're gonna force that game three, and then they're gonna make that like, oh, let's do this. You know, it's TSM. I don't see a lot of oh you know them not at least going 3 games in this without other than of course against Cloud9, which I'm completely okay with.
Well, let's look at the second game now, and let's break it down a little bit, because obviously in this game, again, it wasn't too much of a disparity in kills, but gold uh, was fairly in the favor of TSM. So, Kyle, where did TSM kind of gain the ground on this match and kind of hold on to it? Where did you think their advantage started, and they were able to do well to keep that advantage?
Um, I'm gonna go like when they started making their own plays is when they started gaining their advantages. Because the TSM's really good, does really well with that. They know how to play a map really well, the macro uh game, and
Hmm.
know how to take those advantages like that. Overall, like this time, I mean, I know farming was fairly close on both sides. Uh, the early kill on uh, the some days Jace, that helped out with gaining some of that advantage, especially with Haunter on Poppy. Haunter is a really good Poppy, and
Hmm.
he's really good at making those plays. And ever since that kill, that first blood, they consistently stayed at least 1,000 gold ahead. So they were that first blood gave him that early, gold advantage, even though it was just on Haunter. But ever since that gold advantage, they took that over. They didn't, did they lose? Um, I believe they pretty much kept the gold lead ever since that moment.
They had gold lead starting shortly after the 8 minute mark. So the first blood came at around the 6 minute mark,
Hmm.
and then they slowly grew it in the 8 minute mark and never let go of it basically after that.
Yep, exactly. And like I said, they started making those plays, and started making that roam plays, get the top tower. They were just able to play the macro game and continuously grow that gold lead, and that's what really helped TSM out, taking control of everything, taking control of map presence, jungle presence, everything.
Now, when you look at these two teams, especially when you compare, the team comp of game one to the team comp of game two, um, one thing that jumps out in my eyes is in game one, Chaser had Rek'Sai, a tanky jungler, and Svenskeren had Kha'Zix, where he did really well on Kha'Zix. Then you look at game two, Chaser takes Kha'Zix, Svenskeren goes with Lee Sin. Now, he didn't do great with Lee Sin, but neither did Chaser. And I wanted to ask you, do you feel that was maybe a pushed pick towards Chaser, where they kind of forced him into choosing Kha'Zix, which maybe isn't something that would translate with the team comp that TSM was playing, knowing the fact what team comp they wanted to play?
I think so, because whenever you're on the blue side and I mean, Kha'Zix right now is to that point where he's a must. You pick him up or you ban him. And but it seems like the LCS right now they're just letting him through because everybody feels they can deal with it. But as we can see, Kha'Zix normally has done really really well in this. So I believe it's one of those picks that all right, we're not going to take that away from you. We feel like there's others that we want to take away from you grabbing and picking up before Kha'Zix. So go ahead, take the Kha'Zix because we'll deal with it. So I feel like that's so Dick. That's why they did pick him up, and that was kind of TSM saying, "Here, we'll let you have him because we'll just go ahead and pick up the lease." And
Now, one thing I do want to also ask when we look at this is, as you kind of alluded to, Hanser got that early kill on Sunday, and then as much as Jace is a strong pick that a lot of people in solo queue are picking up, Jace didn't translate well in this matchup. Do you feel that was the weak link, or do you feel maybe the team comp around Dignitas didn't benefit that Jace pick in the top lane?
um, I think it's kind of a weak pick. Like in this team comp, because overall their team's not. I feel like they needed that tanky presence to be that wall, and um, Milk. And what was really crazy is the fact that they banned out Maokai themselves when we know that Chase someday, I mean, that dude gets that dude, Maokai, and he becomes a legit wall. Like, he's so hard to take down and does really well on him to create, and keep everybody safe behind him. And you kind of are in that situation, then why not take the Nautilus? Has Someday played Nautilus yet?
And that is a good question. I'm not 100% sure on that, and I'll try to look at to it as it as you continue your discussion. But I'll try to find that answer real quick.
Because I feel like they were just missing that big guy in the middle, especially Nautilus. Even if I mean Nautilus isn't quite Maokai where you can just root and just click and root somebody, but still you're playing Orianna with Keen. Why not take him Nautilus at least a big tanky wall? If he gets a hook in, that's a big guy to have to deal with, and then you ball delivery somewhat, man. Like I think that would have fit a lot better in this because overall they were a really really squishy team, and when you got a Poppy, especially Haunter on Poppy, that's gonna create a lot of chaos for your back lines. You're in trouble. So I think that was just a bad pick overall within this team comp.
No, I do want to say, prior to their game with Echo Fox, Someday had not played um, Nautilus.
Hmm.
He played Nautilus at least according to the statistics I'm looking at for the first time in their game against Echo Fox, which came on day 2
Hmm.
of NA, but he did not have a very good game on it.
Yeah. Okay.
So that maybe that is why he didn't pick that Nautilus pick into that in the first game, because it maybe it's not a strong point champion for him. Um, they might have pushed themselves into a hole with that Maokai ban, because he has played Maokai
That
6 times, the most of any, and has had some fairly good advantages off of those games.
Yeah, then to me they lost this game with the pick ban phase. When you ban out the champion that you know works for your top lane or the best, I feel, especially in a comp that's fairly squishy like this. I know you have the double shields, but the way the burst is with the Varus and Cass right now, and Lee Sin's so strong right now, does a lot of damage for nothing. Like, you need somebody to interrupt, and Jace is not that guy. That Jace is a guy I'm gonna Q, then I'm gonna R, and then I'm gonna dive in and try to be as disruptive and dish out as much damage as I can before I get blown up, and that just does not work for the comp they have.
Now let's go into game 3, just because obviously for me, when I was heading into this and looking at this series, I thought, okay, obviously Dig take game 1, even though TSM had the advantage most of the time. TSM take game 2 fairly handily. Game 3 is going to be an interesting one, and it kind of was, because it was very slow when it comes to an advantage. It was a really close gold all across it, but TSM ended up taking a big advantage towards the late game, and obviously that led to Dignitas losing. Kyle, what was the biggest statement or the biggest thing that you took away from that game 3?
Um, really well thought out game overall, but then I'm still curious if when it comes to the whole synergy team fight aspect of it, it doesn't seem like Dig is quite there yet, and I think that's hurting them. Cause like when they really lost this game was during a mid lane team fight, and they looked extremely unorganized. Some day looked like he was ready to go in, let's do this, and so was someone else. But then Keen and Rod started backing up, and it was a lot of back and forth. Like I don't know when TSM was just like, oh, they're going in, let's do this, let's just fight, 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 and it was they just kept burning down everybody. And after, so to me, I'm really curious right now if Dig is doing what I felt like P1 was going to struggle with, and it's actually Dig that's struggling with, they don't seem to quite have it yet. They don't have that synergy where as in like single, their single play, their solo play, it's fine and it seems like it works. Dig and Chaser, or Chaser and Someday seem to gel pretty well in the top lane there, ganks and stuff. But overall, like I said, chemistry wise, team fight, it seems pretty messy right now still. They don't know where to focus. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
curious if that's what's affecting this right now.
Well, I wonder also at the same time, um, is communication still an issue with it? Because at the fact, Lod, especially, am I looking and research and trying to see how this team would translate, can't speak Korean. Obviously,
King's the
Keen can.
middleman. Mm-hmm.
Keen is the middleman. Keen can, Chaser can, Someday can. And I wonder if that middleman translation is causing the issue, because obviously Keen hears it, he has to try to convey it real quick to Lot and Special, and that is a delay. You know,
Yep.
that delays any kind of team planning or team synergy, unless they're finding ways to work around it. But obviously this is early. TSM in this series showed me at least that they are uh a team that I kind of expected them to be.
Yes.
And maybe week 1 was kind of a growing pain and them continuing to look at what they can do. I still don't see Dig falling hard from this series. But they still are obviously a work in progress,
Yep.
versus where we're thinking they would be a real contender. So Kyle, let's go to day 2 of EU. What's the series we're looking at?
I am looking at the Splice Vitality matchup because I was really curious on what Splice had to offer and where Vitality was really sitting at.
Well, let's get right into game one. And obviously, heading into it, we didn't know what to expect kind of from, I would say, either team because of their week one performance. So, Kyle, you came out of the pick and ban phase. You see the team comps. Whose team comp did you like heading into the matchup?
I would have to say I like Splices. I like the Shen global with the shield, especially with the Rengar that could dive into the back line, and you get the Shen ult on top of that. Bam, you solidify taking control of it. Um, you get the Ash arrow, then you get the extra protection from Karma, and of course Corki right now a very popular pick, can dish out damage from afar and stay safe. I just overall like their team synergy uh, over Vitality's.
It was definitely a good team comp that fits into this. Now, I liked the Ivern jungle a little bit more than the Rengar jungle on Splice's team, but it makes sense when you have a Rengar on this team comp with Shen in the top lane because, it's kind of similar to a ball delivery system, except it's a ninja delivery system. You ult on top of Rengar, he jumps in, does a bunch of damage, and he gets the shield, and you get out. Now, Kyle, looking at the gold graph, basically, again, somewhat of a slow matchup when it comes to Splice, and kills and death kind of show that as well with 6 kills to 3 deaths. But, or 6 kills to 3 kills, excuse me, on each team. But uh, this was a fairly dominant performance from Splice from beginning to end.
Yeah, no, they never really gave the gold lead up too bad. Like that's what kept them ahead and was able to keep the pressure on, and they just slowly ticked away, and then they finally got that opportunity to finally open up the Baron play, and when they were finally able to open up the Baron play, they were able to get it, secure it, get a couple kills, and then they were finally able to siege down the middle and start opening up the base, which eventually, of course, led overall to Splice's victory.
Yeah, and it's a good, I guess, in my opinion, a good rebound game compared to their week one performance where they get something under their belt. Vitality, in my opinion, still isn't that bad of a team, so it's not like you're, beating a Rocat team at the moment where there's not a lot of hype to build off of it. I think Vitality is just very similar to what we're talking about with Dig, still trying to work out the kinks. They're trying to work out the kinks. Well, let's go into game two. And Kyle, this was an even more dominant performance when it came to the side of Splice, besides their early death. And I wanted to ask where the heck does a Mordekaiser mid lane pick from Senkux come from?
I I have no idea, dude. Like, who ever sees that coming? Like, no one's ever gonna see that coming. But unless there's something that somebody figured out in solo queue, like, hey, you're gonna pick Katarina. Well, guess what? Mordekaiser will eat you apart. So, um, I didn't see that coming. No one probably saw that coming. I mean, y when's the last time we've heard of Mordekaiser? You know what I mean? Like, other than after the rework originally.
You're exactly right. We haven't heard of Mordekaiser basically at all since right after that rework, and there was that big uh, Drake Dragon buff that you could, ult, and then you now had a freaking dragon on your team.
Hmm.
Um, but I will say, it made sense. Katarina obviously wants to snowball, get early kills. And what does Mordekaiser get? He gets a spell shield or a shield from using his spells. And that's obviously way harder for Katarina to rip through. Kyle, great performance from Splice all around on this team. In your mind, does this give them confidence, especially after what they did in their week one performance?
Oh, I think it definitely does. Because you could see that they still work really well together. It's the same exact team that they were last split. They all came back. Originally, they all left, and they got the the new contracts and everything, and it's the same team. I think they just needed a little bit of confidence booster to get things rolling, and I think this team should perform a lot more consistent and better overall, especially against teams that are lower on the power rankings than they are.
All right, well, let's get into the day two for NA. And Kyle, which game are you looking at?
Uh, Day two, I did TSM and Team Liquid, your team. uh,
Yeah, this was a rough series.
yeah,
It was a rough weekend for TL.
it was overall, but you know, TL's I think going through like the rest of Dig and Vitality, going through growing pains.
Yeah, and let's talk about that game one performance because this was technically a gold differential, not close. But in the actual play by play, what's going on and the differences from the teams, this was actually a fairly close game that TL almost turned around. And Kyle, so I just want to ask first, where do you think TSM gained their advantage, or where did Team Liquid, I guess, lose the game?
Um, when you have Bjergsen on Rise, farming up fairly low, although Golden Glue was beating Bjergsen overall in farm early on, but Bjergsen slowly just racked up that farm more and more. But the difference was is Bjergsen had 4 kills already. When you got Bjergsen on a Fed Rise, it's going to be an extremely hard fight to try to come back from. That's a very uphill battle, especially on like I said, Bjergsen having Rise. Rise is still really strong right now. If LeBlanc's not out there, or some of the other ones are out there, Rise is next on that list. And uh, I mean, Bjergsen showed what he can do on Rise.
Yeah, and this was a game where I felt Lorlo had another, I guess, good
Hmm.
game that we were expecting. As you said, Golden Glue did fairly well as well. Bot lane though for Liquid was a very big focal point and doesn't do hot. What do you think that says for that bot lane at the moment?
I don't know I don't know if it's lack of confidence down there or what, because Piglet, before the season started, stated about how he feels Matt really kind of went uh, downward playing with Fabi, and they it's just something's not working right there right now. I don't know if it's just they Piglet somehow needs to get Matt back to that uh Tom you know top performance Matt that we've all seen and know he can play like, because they're just not working right now.
Well, let's talk about game two just because this is kind of the Matt that Team Liquid is looking for. Matt went 0-4-9,
Hmm.
but did well enough keeping Piglet alive, where Piglet went 2-0-10. And so, Kyle, I wanted to ask, do you feel it was the change comp where Malzahar is more of a damage support, but Thresh is more of a playmaking support? Do the Team Liquid need to put Matt on more playmaking supports?
I think they do. I think I think Matt's always looking for a play. Malzahar can make plays, and I know it's really strong right now, but I think Matt needs a guy that he can all in with. You get that hook, you hook in, you flay, you wall, you stop a team, you slow a team. Like there a lot of uh, disruption and stuff like that, and I feel Matt really exceeds at a support like that.
And Golden Glue got, a fairly strong mid laner in Echo. Bjergsen got his Syndra. Where did you think that matchup was lost maybe for Bjergsen? Because he went 3-3-3. Golden Glue 6-1-6.
Yeah, and the thing is Bjergsen actually didn't really. I mean, he was ahead in CS by quite a bit, almost 50, like at points in this. Like Bjergsen was out farming him and everything else, and uh, Golden Glue didn't really get the rest of his kills till the final fights. So he didn't like actually Bjergsen still had the advantage on it. It came down to a team fight where Golden Glue actually was able to get that advantage on him overall. But overall, though, I think Bjergsen still outperformed him over lane to lane.
And that's probably because of the global teleport on Golden Glue versus Bjergsen. Obviously, had the Flash Ghost. But Kyle,
Getting
first, in my opinion, first big game from Reignover. How much is that, I guess, a good thing for Team Liquid as they move forward?
Yeah, Reignover, I feel like has a lot of pressure on him because there's a lot of talk around him. We all know he's an MVP caliber player. He's won it. He was in talks of it last split. So, eh, but that was all with Huni. It's always been Reignover and Huni. Reignover, Huni, Reignover, Huni, Reignover, Huni. Now Huni goes back to Korea. Reignover says, "No, I'm going to stay." So, and here we go. I'm going to go on to a new team, and it's a new atmosphere and everything else. And I think there's early on, it's just a lot of pressure for him himself to perform. And I think he's letting a lot of that sit there on his shoulders when he needs to just play. Just do what you do. Because there's time I've noticed a lot of mistakes of him getting caught out in enemy jungle or caught out too far on a map when in really bad situations. It's like Raynor, you know better than this. Like we all know you know better than this. And I think too though it's also maybe other teams just adapting, like saying, "Hey, we know you like to do this, so I'm going to look out for this." So it's also part of that. But I think there's just a lot of pressure on his shoulders right now, a lot of weight on there, and he just needs to get that lifted and just go ahead and play your game. Do what you can do. Keep helping Lorlo. Because, I mean, bot lane, I know you need to focus around Piglet. I know this is Piglet's team. But Lorlo has been the most consistent player on this Team Liquid team right now. And you really need to make sure he continues to do that. Because Lorlo is outperforming the rest of them right now.
He is, and let's just talk right into that third game because again, fairly good game from Reignover, 3-1-4. Fairly good game from Lorlo, 1-0-3 on the Nautilus. But then you look at the bot lane and Matt, 0-6-6.
Mm-hmm.
Now overall, low kill deaths until the later stages of this game. But Kyle, let's talk about TSM a little bit because we've been talking about Team Liquid a lot. Obviously, it's my favorite team, but TSM, this team definitely shows they're able to even gain an advantage in these long drawn out games. And Kyle, when you headed into game 3 and you saw how they handled the situation, what did you think?
I mean, especially a situation where they were pushing to open up the top and they get wiped out, but they still managed to like let that put that aside. Like, listen, guys, we opened up the base. We did take out what they can, but they got it. They can't do much after this. So once we get up, let's go ahead. We'll make our Baron call and overall finish the game. Like it's a very calm setting team. Like even if something doesn't work well for them they know they can bounce back and make it work the next time. And I feel like that's just what's really strong about that team. They know they can do. It's just that confidence, Like you know you're a top team. You know you can come back from anything. And I just feel like that's where like teams like Cloud9 and TSM differ from other teams. They know how to make that play even from behind.
And you're exactly right. Well, let's head over to EU on day 3. Kyle, what series are we looking at?
H2K and Unicorns of Love.
So this was a big one in both of our opinions on who would possibly be number 2. And we talked about the dominant performance from H2K in their second series, Unicorns of Love, having a somewhat mediocre series, in their first series last week. You head into this, Unicorns of Love comes out firing. What was the factor in the way they handled H2K in game 1?
I honestly don't. Like this team, like overall, this game was very exciting. You got two teams that we both feel are top three, and Unicorns came out to make a statement, and they really did. Like I just overall, they just happened to make the plays where H2K didn't.
Yeah, and I mean the scores reflect it. All across the board, fairly good scores over on H2K's side, not too great. Kyle, when you look at H2K team, it's not bad.
Mm-mm.
Um, so was it just Unicorns of Love that much better of a team comp or that much better play mapping skills? Where did you see the biggest difference?
Um, I I want to say they just happen to find better opportunities to uh make their comp work more so than what H2K did, especially with Exiles Katarina. Um, they happen to find times for Exile to make those big plays where he can clean up those kills. And with Vizitachi on fucking Jen, like I mean, we all know what he could do on there with that global presence. With Katarina, you give her that extra shield from ulting on her, and then you got Jin shooting from the distance. Like it's a very strong team comp, and I just feel like they were able to uh, work around their comp a lot more sufficient than what efficient than what H2K did.
Well, let's talk about game two because obviously in this game, H2K vice versa kind of dominated the game. It was they took the gold advantage early and they never let go of it. So Kyle, where was the turnaround for H2K in game two?
I think they just played overall better. They took advantage of situations a lot more than this time than what uh, Unicorns did, and the fact that they went up with a 2 kill lead instantly, especially on your carry and Kha'Zix, that's especially Jankos. Like if you give Kha'Zix that early um, kill and Varus, you give them that advantage. You have the right to get the advantage on, and they pretty much never looked back from there.
And again, it's still a strong game from Exile over on
Hmm.
Unicorns of Love. There technically wasn't a terrible score on their team besides maybe Visachachi's Jace. Kyle, I have to ask, how confident or how motivating can it be when your mid laner continues to do somebody is strong or somebody on your team continues to do strong and you know that that is the guy you need to continue to have strong games from in order to succeed down the line? How motivating can that be as a team?
Oh, it can be extremely motivating. I mean, look at some of the top teams we talk about. They all have fantastic mid laners. Bjergsen, Nene, uh, Jensen, Cloud9, of course. Um, you look at there's all that hype around perks. Um, of course, with H2K, you got Febivin over there now. You know, like they all have that strong mid lane presence, and for somebody that had a lot of questions around with Exile, and I wasn't a big fan. You weren't like, we just there was always felt like there's just better mid laners than what he was, and he's really shown up this year and proven everybody wrong. Like, hey guys, I'm here for a reason. I'll show you guys, and he consistently just continues to play really well, which is kind of the same situation with Lorlo over in NA. Just that consistency, and that's what you need, and that's really good. It's just you happen to have unicorns have it on a carry, and Exile is just it's just outdoing other mid laners. They just and that's what unicorns really benefiting from.
Yeah, Exiled really stepped up late last split, and then obviously it's continuing to show in this split. Kyle, game three, fairly close, but I
Oh,
do have to
mhm.
ask you, um, there were multiple times H2K took the gold lead and then gave it away. Does that say anything about either of these teams?
I think it's just two teams that are just that close in in strength, and it's two teams that can fight back from both situations. You have a team that can be down, and it seems grim. You Inferno Drake, and you get the the Baron, and you get the Big Drake, and you happen to wait it out and still find a way to fight back, and so does H2K, and then you go ahead and do the same thing, and it's two teams that are, like I said, strength wise, they're both about where the same, and so both teams are showing each other, hey, it doesn't matter if we're down because we'll catch up. Well, guess what? We'll go here. Hold my beer. We'll do it too. You know what I mean? like it's a continue. Like these two teams are just that close, I think, and that's what it's really showing.
And I'm obviously really hyped to see how these teams continue to translate as the season moves forward, and see what advantages each of these teams can continue to grow with, as they're both going to be competing for those top 3 spots. Kyle, day 3 NA, what do you got?
I actually went a little route that some people may not truly expect, but I went with the Echo Fox and FlyQuest. Cause
Interesting series.
yeah, it's very, and the reasoning for me to choose this one, because FlyQuest overall, of course, going into this week, hasn't lost yet, and Echo Fox beats Dig before they get into this matchup. So I was curious, was that a fluke, or is something happening over there with that Fox that's that's slowly starting to kick in?
And let's get right into game 1. Kyle, fairly dominating performance for Echo Fox. Who do you think played the biggest role in this win?
Gate. That Camille support pick was fantastic of a swap with Booper. You're thinking you go into the pick ban phase and you grab Camille, and FlyQuest says, "Oh, hey, we have an answer for that. It's called Poppy. So guess what? We'll go ahead and grab Poppy because we're letting you have Camille." Well, guess what? Camille's gonna go bot lane, and Looper's gonna counter the hell out of balls. So
Yeah.
here you go. And the fact that Gate can play Camille and took that necessity to learn Camille in case of a situation like that really shows on how much his team may be willing to learn other champs in different roles just for the fact to be able to get somebody like Looper a more favorable matchup, especially a champion like Looper.
Well, let's also keep in mind, that Gate pick, or excuse me, that Camille pick really shut down that bot lane of all-time
Oh,
elimination.
it completely
Um,
counters that Malzahar pick. Lemon or once that shield goes down with Malzahar, that was it. Like Lemon Nation was blown up.
and and let's now give a little praise over on FlyQuest team, because despite the fact it was a fairly dominating performance for Echo Fox, Moon
My boy
continuing to
Moon.
step up. Yeah, and I gotta ask you, how did you feel seeing Moon at least continue to be a bright spot for FlyQuest despite a pretty dominating game from Echo Fox?
It's really it's I love seeing this, especially because as you know and you've alluded to before, I became a really big Moon fan, uh, continuously watching his stream when he was kind of off the scene and didn't wasn't sure where he was going yet, and he was streaming every night and stuff. So I really got to know him. He didn't have a lot of viewers and stuff, so you really got to talk to him personally and everything else. And just overall, I became a fan of him, and you could see how well that guy was. I mean, he was, as Lemonation put it as well, he's always been consistently in the top 10 in the ELO rankings. And that's something that's really uh, a good thing to have, you know. It shows consistency out of a player, and this now that he's on a team that he doesn't have to focus on play calling and whatnot, because High is gonna do it all. He can go ahead and freely do what he wants, and he's really showing it because he's like as you said, consistently every match doing really well.
And I also want to say, obviously, if you're going to go on a team with, a solidified, bona fide play caller, a team with High is going to be the good team to go to.
Hmm.
Now let's talk about game 2, because again, Moon translating it this time on the Kazakhs versus the Evelyn. He goes 9-0-8 to Acadian's Graves at 4-4-4. Kyle, how big of a pick was that Kha'Zix play to make FlyQuest's team start rolling?
It was really big. I mean, we saw previously in other matchups, for them to get to the point that they were at this, why Moon and Kha'Zix is picked, and especially when you get a guy like Moon right now that's consistently playing really well, Kha'Zix is going to be huge because it allows him to carry and really get the ball moving. And like I said, Kha'Zix right now is at that point where if you get him fed early, that dude's going to really make the other team's life extremely miserable. But as you said, Acadian 4-4-4 on Graves, but overall, I gotta say, I mean, Acadian's been really consistently performing pretty well overall as well, and I'm really enjoying seeing him along with contracts, two rookie junglers doing really well.
Yeah, Acadian, very strong jungler, doing very well, especially for being, again, a rookie and on, you know, in a split that, as we said before, where we feel the competition level is a lot closer than it has been in previous, NA splits. Um, Kyle, let's head to game three. And just in game three, fairly back and forth. Could have technically went either way. Gold barely edged out in the advantage of Echo Fox, even though they had a strong, a lead at the 20-minute mark. Kyle, what did you think watching this game? What was the biggest sticking point or fact that jumped out at you?
Yeah, I just uh it overall it's just, man, like the the play con from Fox somehow ended up eluding like that whole high, and that's really tough to do. Um, Fox just happened to get that edge at the at the final that really just, you know, turned that game completely around. Especially with of course, as usual, there's a fight that breaks out at on the top side towards Baron, and Fox happened to be the team to come out on top in that one, and you shut down that, and you were able to save your turret and get that, you know, save the turret, um, and then go back up for the Baron fight, and uh, with you know, of course, a Baron call on FlyQuest way, like, oh, let's see if we can get this because that's what High does. Well, that threw the game.
Sometimes you hit it out of the park, and sometimes you strike out, and
it
that
was
was
a
one of those where,
it was a it was a really fun um like 10 minutes worth right there of Baron side lose a fight. We're not gonna take it yet. Cloud9 or FlyQuest, let's do it again. Lose the fight, and that was it.
well, Kyle, obviously that was the first defeat for FlyQuest, but we'll see if they can bounce back in next week. And Kyle, let's go to the final day 4 technically of EU. Again, it was a strange sort of week for EU. Kyle, what series did you want to take a look at on the final day of EU?
I want to look at the Vitality and Origin because I wanted to see if Vitality could finally get a win because we know they're a better team. I was just curious if they could, and I was just kind of curious on how Origin would perform overall against Vitality because Vitality hasn't really seemed to been playing well, and as I completely 100% agree with Kreppel. Origin is nothing but a bunch of B-list players, so I was really curious on how they would perform against Vitality.
Well, in game one, they performed like B-list players, getting pretty dominated. Kyle,
Hmm.
what was the biggest falter in Origin's game for game one?
Just completely outplayed. I mean, they were just overall outplayed. I think that's what basically. I mean, it really showed like um as we alluded to before, the difference between the pro challenger uh, difference. And overall, like I said, map presence, everything else, team, um, playmaking, it was just 100% Vitality side. Origin didn't really know what to do.
Now, the one person that I will give a small bright spot to, and it's somebody, as you know, that I do like on the team, is Wisdom.
Hmm.
On the rec side, didn't do fairly bad. Obviously, when your team is behind, as much as he was, it's a difficult factor. But I know I asked you this before, but how much can Wisdom's bright spot be um, a motivation factor for Origin as they continue to try to find a way to salvage a series together?
For Origin, I don't see. Um, I don't. I think it's a little bit of difference in what like Exile and stuff is. Like, overall, I really don't like this roster at all on Origin, other than Wisdom. Um, I don't think they can really benefit too much just off of Wisdom's performance because you need to get something at least out of the other guys. I don't think you're gonna get that.
Well, let's go to game two, and technically they did get a little bit more of what they were looking for. To me, in my mind, this is very um, reminiscent of how the first series against Misfits was handled as well for Origin. Did terrible in the first game. Well, let's take that back. They were a little close in the first game, a little bit closer in the second game. However, this game, again, fairly close. Kyle, is this I guess, better showing from Origin, or do you feel Vitality maybe gave them a little too much um, staying power in this series?
I could almost say it's a little bit better showing because I mean they fought back like because they got down early with the kills and then they fought back and they actually ended up taking a lead. And then it's one of those things that felt like a switch flipped with Vitality. It's like they were like, hey, what are we doing? It's Origin. Eh, let's just let's just go at them, and that's kind of what they did.
And obviously that ended up snowballing into a huge favor. They ended up winning by nearly, 7,000 gold, I
Hmm.
think it was. Um, is this a good mark for Vitality heading into the week three, or is it kind of like what you just said, where they're like, well, we beat Origin?
I think it's one of those things. Like I'll say this. I'll say it's a good feeling to get that first win on your belt. So you could possibly build something off of it, hopefully. But you got to look at it like, okay, it is Origin. It's a team that's in the bottom two. To me personally, it's a bottom two team. Now we gotta somehow hopefully build this momentum, especially in the coming this coming week against H2K. So that's going to be a true test factor on how they perform against them, and if they gained anything from the Origin series.
Well, we'll see how that goes as we head into the third week of the LCS. And Kyle, let's just do a quick breakdown of your favorite game in EU and in NA. Let's start with the day one for EU. What's your favorite game you're looking at?
I'm gonna go with the Splice and Unicorns. I'm just really curious on if Splice can ride that momentum of the performance they had, and I'm curious if Unicorns could just keep on rolling like they have, and if Exile continues to play on a top tier level.
And who do you think takes it? How many games?
Right now, the way Unicorns is playing, I'm gonna go with Unicorns, and I'm gonna go all three.
All three. You mean all two?
Well,
It's the best of three, but they don't go all three all the time, man. All right, well, let's go into NA. What's your favorite game you're looking at then in NA's day one?
um, eh, uh, I would have to say I'm kind of
I know
gonna.
which one I got my eye on.
Oh, of course you do. I think I'm gonna go with the Liquid and Envy one as well, just for the fact that Envy's the worst team in NA, and Liquid has really struggled hard and has looked really, really bad at times. So I'm curious if they can really just put on a dominance performance against the worst team.
Yeah, and I will say, as much as you said they look really, really bad, I think it's one of those things where they can look so bad, and at the same time they can look so good because they've had some good like holy crap series or games, and then they've had some like what the heck is this team doing games.
I just really
They're
hope,
too inconsistent at the moment.
I really would hope that since they're playing Envy, they would just give me some Link finally.
I knew that you were going to say that. Now, who do you think wins it and how many games?
I think Liquid does a sweep.
I think so too. And that could be my fanboy coming out. Anyways, day 2, EU. What series you looking at?
Day two, I am definitely gonna have to go with the Vitality H2K. Again, Vitality coming off the Origin win is very meh, but let's see if they can get anything out of that. And H2K coming off of a um, heartbreaking loss against Unicorns are looking to bounce back.
Yes, and what do you think goes on in that series?
I don't know. I'm thinking H2K comes back out with a chip on her shoulder, and I almost feel like they're gonna run Vitality over and pull out
I
the sweep.
I think it's a 2-0 as well. I don't see Team Vitality being too confident heading out of that Origin series,
Hmm.
as much as maybe H2K is wanting to justify what happened for them. Kyle, I have my eye on a certain game in day 2 of NA, but what series do you got an eye on?
I am going to go with the FlyQuest and Dig matchup. Um, there's is the other matchup that I'm thinking that you're looking at, but I'm going to go with FlyQuest and Dig. I'm really curious if FlyQuest can bounce back from that Echo Fox loss, and I'm just curious if Dig can finally overall come together as a group.
Yes, yes, it was the other game that I was looking at, but that's just because of the rivalry aspect of it. But I do agree, FlyQuest Team Dignitas is right now, in my opinion, the more curiosity game to look at. Who do you think pulls it out? How many games?
Ooh, I'm gonna go FlyQuest 2-1.
Ooh, I'm going vice versa. Dignitas 2-1. I think they can put it together this week. And that's not to say anything bad against FlyQuest. I just think that Dignitas right now is maybe wants to prove what the heck is going to happen with this
Hmm.
team
I
because of
could
what
see it.
happened last week.
Mhm.
All right, let's go. Final day, EU, day 3. What do you got?
You got Scrub and Scrub. um, I'm
Ooh, ouch.
I mean Origin and Rocat, man, to me bottom two
I know.
teams. But
I'm just saying, ooh, ouch.
I'm going to go with the Origin and Splice just for the fact that I think Origin can put up that a little bit better fight though than Rocat can against Fnatic. Um, I still think Splice takes it, but Origin seems to for some reason like to take it 3 games. So we'll see if they can do it again.
All right, and what do you think do you think it's all 3 games or do you think it's a
No,
2-0?
I think it's 2-0 Splice.
All right. Well, then let's look at the final day of NA. Kyle, what are you looking at?
I am looking at the Dig and Counter Logic Gaming because right now the way that both teams are playing, I feel I think Dig overall has the better talented roster right now. Although I really do love the Counter Logic bot lane. I'm really like Stixxay. I think he's really good, but I feel like that's kind of that mid tier teams right now, and I'm just curious on which one is going to be the top half of the five and which one's going to be the bottom half of the five.
Well, we already know in my power rankings where I got CLG. But what do you think pulls it out when it comes to that series?
I think Dick's going to pull it out though. I'm going to go all 3 games. It's going to be 2-1 uh, or all 3 matches, and I think Dick's going to take it 2-1.
All right. Well, that's what you hear it from the Kyle Doom. Kyle. And hopefully I will put your words to it, and I will come back next week and either laugh in your face or say, "Good job, man. You did a good job." All right. Anyways, guys, you can always ask us any questions to have it answered on our show, and you can follow us on Twitter. You can follow me at jculver28. That's JCULV as in Victor ER28. You can also find Kyle on Twitter
at TFL Khaldum. That's TFLKYLEDOOM.
and we will answer any questions that you guys send us. Be sure to also follow us on SoundCloud and share with your friends on the show. Like, subscribe, comment, and also download the episodes so that way you can take it on the go. Listen to it while you're in the car or at the gym, or just play it to annoy your parents. Do whatever you want with the show. Just make sure that you're playing it. Now, be sure to check back next week as we will be breaking down all the other games that happened on this weekend. Maybe even talk a little bit of the Super Bowl just because it is Super Bowl weekend. But just for the last time in this episode, I am your co-host, Jeremy Culver, a.k.a. Darcy.
And I'm Kyle Khaldum.
Be sure to check back next week as we continue to bring you the news from the ring.